Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin, publisher of thebreaker.news. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob, what was your impression of the Tories' behavior during the tabling of the federal budget in the House of Commons? First making a lot of noise so you couldn't hear anything, and then marching out of the House. Was that the way to appear prime ministerial for Mr. Scheer?
Well, it was unparliamentary, yes, but desperate times demand desperate measures. And what else could they do on the same day that the Trudeau Liberals, who dominate the Justice Committee, decide to shut down the Justice Committee and to stop hearing witnesses and testimony about the SNC Lavalin scandal, and decided not to recall Jody Wilson-Raybould. So the Conservatives tried everything they could within their power as the opposition party to try to make Canadians know and to try to express their displeasure to the Liberals when the Liberals were delivering their pre-election budget. That the SNC Lavalin scandal is not going away, and it's not time for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals to use the budget, the most important day of the year in the House of Commons. They can't just use that to change the channel.
What about Trudeau losing another caucus member today? Yeah.
Yep.
What about Trudeau losing another caucus member today?
Well, it wasn't a big surprise. Selina Cesar-Chavez, the would-be Ontario Liberal MP, who already went public a few weeks ago saying she would not run again. There was the Globe and Mail story that came out that gave the backstory to what happened there and how she felt that she was bullied by Trudeau. Trudeau wasn't listening to her, and now Trudeau and his people bullied her. So that wasn't necessarily a big surprise that it happened. She's not in cabinet. She's the first-term MP from riding not far from Toronto. That'll definitely hurt the Liberals in credibility, and again, they're losing support among women. That's what really could harm Trudeau going into the election this fall, is losing support from women, female voters, because he's this self-avowed feminist prime minister, and if he's losing support among women, it's no surprise after seeing both Jody Wilson-Raybould and also Philpott, the other minister, leave the cabinet, and now you've got a member leaving caucus entirely. After some actually suggesting that Philpott and Wilson-Raybould should be out of cabinet themselves, or out of caucus themselves. We'll see if that happens. But not good times for Justin Trudeau, as the SNC Lavalin scandal, which is known on social media as #LavScam, just continues.
Right, and of course we have the Office of Economic Development and Activity now citing Canada as being a nation that might be harboring scandalous and bribe-prone business.
Yeah, it appears that Canada has not done enough to satisfy this international body of United Nations to be seen to be upholding its responsibilities when it comes to international conventions around compliance and enforcement of business and stopping corruption. Not a good thing to go into an election when there's a cloud of corruption hanging over the government, especially in this situation where SNC Lavalin is doing whatever it can. Now it's trying to go to the court of public opinion to try to tell Canadians why the government should be lenient. yeah, this is a company that, again, was caught paying bribes to the government of Libya under Muammar Gaddafi when he was alive by whining and dining and doing all sorts of things they shouldn't have been doing to enrich the sons of Gaddafi, including on trips to Canada, and giving them luxury goods, recurring yachts for them, all sorts of things in order to gain those contracts in Libya. The question for Canadians is, how much of Canadians' money from taxpayers and how much of Canadians' money from shareholders went into the pockets of SNC Lavalin? One pocket of SNC Lavalin, then went out the other pocket in the form of a bribe. This is a serious situation here that really does need to be solved, and I think the only way that it'll ever be solved is if this does go to court and goes to full trial and have all the facts aired, and of course have all the facts and evidence tested in court, and then have a judge make the final decision.
Right, we had the CEO of SNC today saying, well, we never mentioned anything about 9,000 jobs. We didn't threaten to move from Canada. Yet he says if we don't get this special prosecution deal, we could be dead meat and thousands of jobs could be lost.
Well, I find that very interesting that he said that the day after the parliamentary committee essentially shuts down its work on the SNC Lavalin file and decides to move on to other things. So very, very convenient. Again, this is a company that has benefited from taxpayers in Canada, has built a lot of large infrastructure projects. Sometimes it's been on budget. Many times it hasn't been on budget. It's a company that is deeply involved, especially here in British Columbia, and some serious questions have to be asked. And it's also asked of our politicians and why they aren't taking a greater interest in this, and why, for instance, the NDP puts SNC Lavalin on the short list to build the Patella Bridge.
Do you think that SNC just has so many fingers into so many pies that it's pretty hard to cut off one without messing the whole bakery?
Well, it's a company that has benefited from government contracts, from getting intellectual property knowledge of all sorts of things in Canada, from being involved in every single phase of the SkyTrain in Vancouver, for instance, and has its designs on being involved in the future phases of SkyTrain, the Broadway subway, and also the expansions in Surrey. This is a company that has benefited from government contracts, from public money all the way along, and it's a company that was caught in Quebec making illegal political donations by reimbursing staff to make donations on behalf of the company. Company donations are not allowed in Quebec. And this company that has hired lobbyists, one of its lobbyists and very high-ranking people, former Supreme Court Justice Frank Iacobucci was in the corner of SNC Lavalin most recently. Company that benefited here in British Columbia, for instance, it had someone from the president's office, a fellow named Robert Tribe, who's not with us anymore, but back in 2008, he was a director of the TransLink Board. And while he was a director of the TransLink Board, he was still an advisor with SNC Lavalin, even though he had actually retired from his executive post. He was an advisor at SNC Lavalin. He was sitting on the TransLink Board, and he was also making political donations to the BC Liberals who were in government at the time. A lot of questions got to be asked about this company and whether Canadians got value for every dollar they spent through SNC Lavalin, or if in the procurement process or in the process of building, if there was anything that broke any laws.
Now, when they say a lot of jobs would be lost if they weren't allowed to bid on federal contracts if they're convicted, well, my understanding is for most engineering firms, you hire people as you need for a project, and as the projects become completed, they're laid off again. So really, wouldn't these highly skilled people just be working for a different firm, but wouldn't necessarily lose jobs?
Indeed, these people would find jobs elsewhere, and this would be only a major inconvenience for the shareholders of the company and maybe the board of directors. But for those highly skilled people that are needed for major infrastructure projects, they'd find jobs elsewhere. There might be a bit of a hiccup in transition because there are projects that are underway, such as Site C, where SNC Lavalin is one of the major companies that's building that. There might be some disruption to those kind of projects as well, and some of the tendering that's gone out where SNC Lavalin's on a short list, so all the short lists might have to be revisited. But ultimately, what is important is that public dollars are spent wisely and legally.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, is there anything new on the BC Legislature scandal involving the Sergeant at Arms and Clerk of the Legislature?
Well, Beverly McLaughlin, the retired Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, is doing her work, and she's got a May 3rd deadline to deliver her report on whether essentially the Sergeant at Arms and the clerk, or whether Gary Lenz and Craig James should be kept around, either on suspension or entirely sent away from the legislature, sent packing, while the police investigation goes on. So she'll be doing that work, and we'll see how that work comes about. I'm sure there'll be some more work that'll be done at the Legislative Assembly Management Committee. There will be, of course, the Auditor General, who's working on a report as well. And we're waiting to hear also on the terms of reference for a workplace review. A human resources professional will come in and look and see what can be done to improve the Legislative Assembly so that its management will not fall into this deep hole again, and a deep hole that we only know of because of Speaker Darryl Pluckus was brave enough, since he is independent, to start asking questions and noticing things around him that were not kosher with him at all. Of course, we're still waiting for another piece, which is the NDP government to add the legislature to the Freedom of Information Law. That's a very, very important situation that we need to have solved, because the Legislative Assembly, since it's not under the Freedom of Information Law, was a scandal waiting to happen. That this may not have happened if Craig James and Gary Lenz knew that people like me could ask the government through an FOI request to get their calendars, to get their expense reports. They would probably have acted a lot differently had they known that there were eyes, figuratively, watching over their shoulders.
Well, wasn't the way to get things approved was they just took turns signing each other's invoices and bills?
That was one of them. They seem to have lax oversight by the Legislative Assembly Management Committee, which is also a problem, that the politicians were not exactly doing their due diligence. They seem to be rather lax in their attitude that, it wasn't very sexy to deal with. The Legislative Assembly managing itself, and politicians just weren't terribly interested, perhaps, in guarding every single dollar until Darryl Pluckus came along as Speaker and made this an issue. That's another problem there is we can also ask our politicians why they weren't doing their jobs. Some weren't doing their jobs. Others were trying to do their jobs. Craig James, if the proper process had been employed, would not have become clerk as he did in June 2011. He still may have become clerk, but he would not have been appointed clerk in the fashion that he did if the proper process was observed and respected. The BC Liberals appointed him as the clerk in June 2011. by using their majority in the legislature. They didn't put this to the Legislative Assembly Management Committee. They didn't put this to another committee of the legislature for all parties to be consulted on and for all parties to debate and deliberate on. They just rammed this through, and that gave birth to even more accusations of partisanship, that Craig James was doing work on behalf of the party in power, or at least helping them out. That was part of the whole bias issue was part of the first caucus report in January. So this is something we got to keep an eye on, even though it's kind of quieted down as the federal controversy over SNC Lavalin has taken hold and become the biggest news story in the country. We can't forget what's happening in the legislature and how that needs to be dealt with in the months to come. And of course, RCMP investigation, Craig James and Gary Lenz. We don't know what else the RCMP are doing in that investigation. There's also 2 special prosecutors, which is extraordinary. This all, of course, came to the fore November 20th when Craig James and Gary Lenz were walked out of the legislature, and we found out that there was a police investigation with 2 special prosecutors.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of Powerband Solutions. Powerband is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. Powerband Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWBF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, is there a concern with expanded sports betting that more people may become addicted to gambling? I know the official figure from the province is 4.6%, which accounts for about a third of the money spent on gambling in the province. Could that number be higher, and would sports suck even more people in?
Well, the recent BC Lottery Corporation New Horizons and Responsible Gambling Convention happened at the Park Casino in Vancouver, the conference center there. Experts from around North America and some from other continents came to deliver reports and talk things out about issues relating to gambling addiction. And one session I went to was the National Council on Problem Gambling from the United States. A fellow named John Feeney, who was a former bureaucrat from the Minnesota State Lottery, came and delivered the results of a survey that was done back in November by Ipsos, across U.S. survey looking at problem gambling, especially looking at sports gambling. And they found in this survey that sports gamblers and sports fantasy gamblers are twice the risk of developing problems with their gambling, which could include addiction, as regular gamblers are. Regular gamblers could be lottery gamblers, casino gamblers, people that buy raffle tickets, but about 3% of them are believed to be susceptible to problems. Well, when it comes to sports gambling and fantasy sports gambling, that's 6 or 7%. And that was something that was identified in this survey, especially younger gamblers who are passionate about sports, younger male gamblers in their teens and 20s, not so much the older gamblers who are more apt to stand back and think twice about spending on gambling. Sports gambling, of course, there are aspects of sports gambling that you can develop a skill and actually succeed at sports gambling, but very few professional sports gamblers are there out there. So that was identified in this, and that's an interesting one because sports is a huge industry, professional sports, spectator sports, and it is really the last bastion for live television. It's almost PBR proof. You want to watch the games as they happen. And sports lotteries are developing new and interesting products, especially in the United States, where the ban on sports gambling was struck down at the Supreme Court level. that you can offer sports gambling commercially through other states than just Nevada. That it's been legalized, and some states are going at it more aggressively than others. New Jersey is one of them, for instance. So we're only going to see more sports gambling, especially sports gambling that is offered legally to mobile devices and through social media. This all comes about as the internet exploded really back in the early 2000s, when all sorts of offshore casinos and sports gambling websites popped up, and that revenue wasn't being kept in the home jurisdictions where the gamblers were gambling, especially in the United States. Well, now there is a chance that the money will stay in the States, but of course, with more people gambling, this survey points to more people developing problems with their gambling.
Yes, well, people are emotionally involved with their team, and I'm sure, I know my nephew really likes to get into fantasy games and stuff, and they feel it's a way to support their team. Put your money where your mouth is.
Well, there is that, but there are also people that bet pragmatically and bet against their team. And we've also got to be worried about people that are involved in those teams or involved in those leagues also gambling. We can never forget the situation that has kept Pete Rose out of the Baseball Hall of Fame, where he was managing the Cincinnati Reds, and he was betting on games involving the Cincinnati Reds. We can't forget also match fixing scandals that have happened in recent years in Europe and in Asia, and allegations of match fixing that have happened even in North American sports events. The integrity of the game really is all that sports has. The uncertainty of the outcome. That's why people watch and follow professional sports, and also Olympic sports and other national team sports, is the uncertainty of the outcome. Well, the integrity of the game is challenged, then we have less of sports being that compelling avenue for people's attention.
Well, I look at some of the appalling calls or non-calls in the NHL, and you always say to your buddy, gee, I wonder if he's got a sports action ticket on this.
Well, there was a case of an NBA referee a number of years ago.
Yes.
He got involved in a match fixing scandal. So, I mean, it's a question that people might ask jokingly, but with lax oversight of professional leagues, with lax governance of the international federations that are supposed to govern the sports, that's a question that we're free to ask, especially after investigative journalist Andrew Jennings and others were able to unveil and reveal all sorts of match fixing that has happened even at the World Cup level. That's a sad state of affairs that there have been cases of that happening, and of course, well, we're at a point in time where it's a century since the famed Black Sox scandal changed everything in Major League Baseball. This is something that definitely the integrity of sports should be further on the minds of those in professional sports who are becoming partners with sponsors who are in the gambling space.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's an award winner and the publisher of TheBreaker.News, his website, TheBreaker.ca. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.